Just tuck and roll. You got that little mark on it? There's a box, isn't there? There is. Yeah, but it's right under your desk somewhere there. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please join me to a pledge of the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the November 5th West Fargo City Commission meeting. First order of business is for my fellow commissioners to approve the order of the agenda. Gentlemen?
I would like to pull off items C and D from the consent agenda, their approval of minutes, and put them in with the minutes under item C, so all the minutes are being considered.
At your desk, Mike, you have an amended agenda.
Okay,
There was, as of this morning, there should be an amended one for you.
well, good, it got done.
All right? Keep me honest, Mike. Keep me honest.
It's not the one I got mailed. So.
I move we approve the order.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson, is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jurdevig. It's been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number C, the approval of the minutes from the October 15th, 2018 meeting. Oh, I'm on the wrong agenda. See what you did to me, Mike? Oh, yeah, okay. No, I am correct. So, thoughts on the approval of minutes?
Is that where you had a problem?
Yeah.
Mr. Thorsten, I mean?
Well, we had 3 sets of minutes, and 2 of them originally were in the consent agenda, and 1 was on the regular agenda like normally is.
Okay, well, with Mike's concern,
No, the one that was the agenda that was sitting here has all 3 sets of minutes under one item.
yes, sir. But I'm going to break that down. Is there any questions or additions to October 15th?
Make a motion to approve October 15th?
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Commissioner Thorstead. All those in favor of the minutes of October 15th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. October 29th, the minutes have been distributed to you.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdevig. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson, it's been moved and seconded to approve the October 29 minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. October 8th, the minutes have been distributed to you, Commissioners.
I move we approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thorstvedt is second. Been moved and seconded to approve the October 8th minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Building permits. The listing has been distributed to you. Are there any questions, concerns, comments?
I move we approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and Commissioner Jurdevig, thank you for the second. Been moved and seconded that we approve the building permits. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have 2 items on there. Games of chance for Shiloh Lodge. Number 1, games to be conducted, raffle from 11/5 to 5/4 of 19 at the West Fargo VFW. Item number 2 is gaming site authorization for Prairie Public Broadcasting. Games to be conducted, raffles, pull tab, jar pull tab dispensing devices, prize board 21, poker on 11/5 to 11/30 of 18 at the Doubletree by Hilton. What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second, please? Been moved and seconded by Commissioner Simmons and seconded by Commissioner Jurdevig to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. First order on the regular agenda is to review the Cheyenne Street Phase 2 change order for crash actuators. Chris.
Mr. President, Commissioners, in front of you tonight is a request for a change order on Cheyenne Street Phase 2. The DOT, as we continue to construct this project, continue to review the plans and consideration of the design speed out there and the recovery area. They requested the city to place crash attenuators in front of all signal light standards within the right-of-way, the recovery area. From that point, we went through and did some redesign. We moved some of the signal standards outside the recovery zone, which allowed us to reduce the total number of attenuators needed. With attenuators are those big crash cushions in front of there. So now we've got us down to 3 separate locations, a total of 5 attenuators. The adjustment for the change order is $117,759.20, and I'm looking for your approval.
Change order up or down?
Up.
Okay, on your spreadsheet, Chris, you had, it looked to me like they were going to take out one whole traffic control light.
What they did in this is they're doing some moving around of the standards. Some of these had longer mast arms that were down, I believe, on 29th Avenue, and they're moving that one up to Beaton, and then making the change to Beaton for the one down here at 29th. That was able to eliminate one of the crash attenuators by moving the standard farther away. So they removed one entire system, and they added one entire system back in. You'll notice the change in the price is about $5,000. That was for the added price of the longer mast arm.
It was a reduction of $1.2 million,
correct. It was a reduction of $1.2 million and an increase of $1.3 million. So the net is the 117.
Right, very good. Anything else for us, Mr. Fargo?
I just have a question, Mayor. Is that,
please?
Thank you. Is that our portion already split up? That
it is a participating cost. However, we have overspent their matching funds by a significant amount, so it all will be
all
a
ours?
local cost.
Okay.
Correct.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve the change order.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
And Commissioner Olson, thank you. Been moved and seconded to approve the Cheyenne Street Phase 2 change order for the crash actuators. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Brungard. Next order of business on the regular agenda is the review of the preliminary engineering task order for Cheyenne Street Urban Grant. Chris?
Mr. President, Commissioners, in front of you tonight is a task order and a scope of work to produce the environmental document and preliminary engineering for the Downtown Cheyenne Urban Grant. This is required as part of any type of federal funds to make sure we follow all the NEPA rules, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. Make sure we're not affecting any endangered species, wetlands. Wetlands downtown is kind of interesting too. They have disadvantaged populations, so if we have groups of poor, things like that, to make sure we follow all the rules that we're eligible for the federal funding. That was also this originally came in quite a bit higher. We met with more engineering and discussed the need for the tasks and the depth that these task orders are needed to be in. Since we were only coming in with 2 alternatives to evaluate, that brought the cost down significantly to a project cost not to exceed $72,000. If the DOT throughout this process does go through this task order and they decide to have something that's not within the task order, we may be back with you for addendum. Members of More Engineering are here if you have any questions specifically to the scope of work.
Hey, Mr. Simmons?
Chris, will this be covered under the grant money that we received?
It is not. This is local share.
It's just the local share of it,
Correct.
so.
Uh,
But if we don't do it, we don't probably get the grant money either, right?
We will not get the grant
So,
money.
okay.
It is eligible under the grant dollars, but, typically what we've always done is reserve those dollars for construction activities, and we pay for all the engineering. But with our local dollars, gives us a little bit more freedom of how we do things.
How we use it, sure. Okay.
And that grant is for $2.75 million?
That sounds about right, Mr. President. Thank you.
Anything else for us, Mr.
I have
President?
nothing more.
All right. Any further questions for Chris? What's your pleasure?
I move we accept.
Been moved by Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig. It's been moved and second to accept the preliminary engineering task force for Cheyenne Street Urban Grant. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Third order of business on the regular agenda is the discussion of the property at 3710 26th Street Northwest in Harwood. Mr. Cody Shulman and Tim Sobert. Mr. Sobert.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've not actually met the applicant, Cody Shulman, but I believe he's going to be here tonight. I've only spoken with him on the phone and through email. The property that he's looking at was platted with a building on it, and so the remaining building was set as legal non-conforming. For whatever reason, at the time that it was platted, we didn't have the information we have today. So the person bought it from another person, came in to actually get a permit. We're not able to issue a permit. One request that he's made tonight is that the city would vacate some right-of-way. Before doing that, it's quite an expensive legal operation to do that. The city won't take that. We typically transfer that to the person who's requesting it, and we have our legal staff put that together. In this case, my recommendation would likely be to potentially deny that vacation, but I want to bring it before the commission to give him the opportunity to ask you before he moves forward on that. The reason I would have a problem with it is that the property is a township road. We'll likely have some comment from the county because it's near the Maple River Aqueduct of the proposed FM diversion. However, I do see that he has a case to be made that the land was platted with a property on it, leaving a nonconformity. So he's in a little bit of a pickle there. John has looked at the issue a little bit. I don't know if you have any comment prepared at all, but I'd leave it at that. And if the applicant is here, I'd offer his ability to speak to this as well. So.
Is Mr. Shulman in the commission chambers? Thank you, Mr. Sobert. Mr. Shockley?
I just would echo Tim's comments. We took a quick look at the request for vacating the right-of-way, and I believe they vacated, or it was platted in conformance with the county's current requirements for the width of the right-of-way for future development. We looked at the area, and potentially it would develop in the future, so arguably there is a need for a larger right-of-way. And so Tim and I felt that we weren't comfortable making a recommendation to vacate it, and just wanted to bring it forward to the commission and have the applicant explain why he felt it was necessary.
Again, is Mr. Shulman in the building? Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
I don't know why he's not here tonight, so I apologize for that.
It's your pleasure.
I'll make a motion to deny.
All right. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Simmons, second by Commissioner Jurdevig. Been moved and seconded to deny the possibility of vacating some at property at 3710 26th Street Northwest in Harwood. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The request is denied. Next order of business is to review the proposal for special assessment community forms. Mrs. Richards.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to come up here and talk a little bit about the special assessment forums. We'll go through this PowerPoint as quickly as possible, and you guys have seen it to take a look at it as well. Here we go. I don't know what this is. There we go.
No pressure on you, Melissa, at
Yeah.
all. But the longer you stand, or the longer it takes for them to get their raise. So.
Yeah. Controversial topic. There's extra cops here.
That's your speed, yeah.
I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
I don't know why it won't go. All right. Well, we'll take a look. All right. So, James. Here we go. Got it. We're on it. Thank you, James. James Anderson, everyone.
Stand up.
All right. So just a little background. As we all know, special assessments is a financing method that was established by the North Dakota Century Code. It's used to allocate costs of infrastructure improvements throughout the city. Back in August, Commissioner Jurdevig brought forward a motion to schedule community forums to discuss special assessments out in the public, and the commission approved moving forward. What I'd like to do tonight is to look at a proposed goal and then objectives to help lead us as we plan these events. So the objective will be to host community events to provide education on special assessments and an opportunity for West Fargo property owners to provide input on special assessments. During the events, we're looking at an agenda for the event that would include an introduction of the event, as well as a pre-event survey to measure everyone's knowledge of special assessments, as well as their feelings about special assessments. We'd also like to incorporate a brief overview of the Fargo Special Assessment Committee that Commission President Dardis is currently sitting on. We'd also like to do, one of the most important aspects to it will be an education on the special assessment process, what they are, where they came to be, how we operate within them. But based on feedback from Commissioner Jurdevig when we sat down, and feedback from the rest of you as well that you provided, we also feel it's important to bring up the idea of how property taxes fit into it, and the use of sales tax and enterprise funds, and how we have all of these tools that combine to help us with these infrastructure projects. It's probably an element the public isn't as knowledgeable about, and so we want to make sure that they have the full picture as they review special assessments. And then what we'd like to do is break out into small groups and then allow that time for some good quality time for those residents to then provide input on the process once we've given them the full picture. After all of that, we'd also like them to do a post-event survey so we can measure their knowledge of special assessments after that and how valued they feel like their input was during the meeting. We do want to make sure when we're looking at those small group breakouts and who the speakers are, that we're identifying speakers and facilitators who present a really neutral, approachable presence, so that the community members that do attend feel comfortable providing feedback. And so that might not necessarily mean you guys standing up there providing the information. There might be a staff member or somebody different. And we can talk about that further as we get into planning. But we want to make sure it's everyone feels comfortable providing input, because that's one of the main goals of the event. In terms of target audience, what we're really looking at is property owners in West Fargo. Those are the ones who the special assessments are getting leveraged against, as well as the property taxes and those other funding forms that go into it. And then secondary to that, are the other City of West Fargo taxing agencies, so the school district, the park district, even Cass County, as well as our state legislative representatives. For them to participate and even observe, we feel like would be helpful as we think about the total tax burden and the total financial burden on our residents for living in West Fargo. And we also hope that it would be educational for those state representatives as they go back and make decisions on our behalf. So based on those elements, I have outlined a few goals. I think it's important to have measurable goals that we look at when it comes to this event to make sure that we are successful. One of the first goals really outlines that we want to do 5 community forums with an average of at least 50 attendees at each, and that will be, we feel like that's a good size to provide the information and then the opportunity to break out into those small groups and provide inputs. We didn't want to try to hold 10 forums, so we thought 5 was a good number. And then we'll have other digital tools available for people who can't make it so that they can also participate. That was a concern that was brought up. How do we limit it? And we'll have to work through some of those options. But we also know the colder it gets, the harder it is to get people out. And we're looking at a time frame through the end of the year. And so the holiday schedule will get busy. So we think the mix of the 5 community forums and those digital tools will help us get a good mix of the population. So another thing that we did was try to look at where the best areas were to target having an event to be centralized to our population. So our GIS specialist, Travis Genty, pulled this map together for me. It's a heat map that demonstrates where the most intense pockets of ownership are in the city. And so we have the list of the Westport Beach neighborhood, the Meadow Ridge neighborhood, the Eagle Run neighborhood, the Elmwood Court area, and then this kind of cross-section of West Fargo along 13th Avenue between 9th Street and Cheyenne Street. So what we would do is use those 5 areas to target a location to be convenient to people in that neighborhood where there's a collection of homeowners. We'll also, like I said, be looking to use digital tools to increase participation and try to get out to more residents with the limited space that we'll have. By the end of the year, we'll also be looking at hoping to get at least 3,700 foreign participants via the digital tools, and that 3,700 is 10% of the population roughly, so that's just a kind of standard survey tool that we use for input that'll help us. The digital tools that we're looking at is to get the educational content on the website with a form for feedback, utilizing Facebook Live at the events and having someone manning it, so as questions and comments come in on Facebook Live, we can respond to them. Posting the events on the PAG Access channel for people to watch, looking at using a live Twitter Q&A to get questions answered, and then we also have a YouTube channel to post that we can cross-link to those surveys to measure people's education and give them an opportunity to provide input. So just another way for us to broaden the amount of people that can participate and provide their input. In terms of the impact of the event, what we'd like to use is those pre- and post-event surveys and the online survey for digital participants to measure any increase in their knowledge of special assessments. We hear, I think a lot of times when we have conversations and we explain the process to residents and how it all fits into the overall network of the funding, it makes the conversation with residents a little bit easier. So one of the things we really want to make sure we can measure is that education and if it worked. The other thing that we'd be looking at measuring, and this would only be for the live events, is their feeling of providing valued input. And that's because although we'll have that digital tool and a space to provide input, it's not the same as being in there in person talking to someone and providing input. So I think that metric of success really only works for those live meetings to measure that. Post-event, what we'd like to do by March of 2019 is to launch a more robust special assessment website that has further education and has a better process for tracking the projects as they come in and having it be a better digital space for residents who are wondering what special assessments are affecting my property right now, what might be on the horizon, how does this work, to come to that website and interact with the city more on special assessments and find out information. And then the other thing we'd like to do is we really want to make sure that through all that community input and the engagement that we have, that our residents felt like they were heard, or that there's actually action happening because of these events. So what I'd like to say, and this is up for discussion, but to announce at least one idea that we identify came through these efforts that we're then going to research and determine if we can actually implement it. And it might have to do with funding mix, it might have to do with the process for communication of special assessment. I think that's something that's come out loud and clear that we need to do a better job of. It might, just be ongoing communication or conversations with commissioners or with engineers or whatever it may be. But I want us to find at least one idea that we can say, thank you for your input. Because of that, we're going to do this moving forward to really help our residents know that their input was heard. So With all that said, the approval that I'm requesting today is really the approval of the objectives and goals outlined in this plan, and then we'll use that to start getting the events rolling and getting those dates and locations identified. And Tina and I are available for questions, and Commissioner Jurdevig as well. This was his brainchild.
I guess just, Commissioner, does this meet your specifications? Is this what you kind of wanted? And
yeah, I think it's a great outline of.
I think if there's topics that keep coming back to light, I assume property taxes is usually, and one that he had brought up originally too, when we go through this and we hear that there's a lot of a need to discuss that more, we'll have a nice framework to keep rinsing and repeating and tackling these tough issues that keep coming up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the only question that comes to mind when I look through it is, do you think we'll be able to get 5 events between now and the end of the year and get 50 people to each of them? Is that a realistic?
It's a lofty goal. I think the topic is still really fresh on everyone's minds. So I'm hopeful that we can, and if it comes a little later, although we might not reach our goal in terms of timing, I'm hopeful that we'll still reach our goal in terms of people attending and the engagement that we can receive.
I was stopped twice today on the topic, just randomly,
right, yeah.
So I think it's certainly feasible.
You raise a great question, Commissioner. We've had 6 meetings now for the Fargo Special Assessment Task Force. The goal was to be done in December. It won't happen. There's another meeting next week, and there'll be more meetings in December and going into the first of the year. It is a complex issue because of the funding model has been used for a long time, and I have to say that one of the most learned persons in consulting on this is sitting over at the table right there. Mr. Shockley has been very, very helpful to the Special Assessment Task Force for the City of Fargo, and his breadth of knowledge in this, not only in these communities, but throughout the area, is amazing. With regard to your point on the 50, if you exclude city staff, we probably have had a maximum of 15 at any one of the meetings that we've had at the Fargo City Hall, just as a point of reference. So your question is on point, Eric. It's tough to get them out. So
I would be more than happy to extend that timeline to maybe like February 2018 to give us a little bit more time to schedule it. But I also didn't want to spend more time and not be working at it. So.
Excellent outline, Mrs. Richards, no doubt about that. What's the pleasure? Melissa would like to have this as an action item, is that we approve her preliminary outline, but with some potential of amendments, I would certainly think. But
I move we approve it.
thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jurdevig. It's been moved and seconded to approve the special assessment community forums outlined this evening. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Next order of business is on the regular agenda is item number 5, is the review the reimbursement agreement for the utility infrastructure. Mrs. Fisk.
Good evening, President and Commissioners. This agreement is between Consolidated Communications Enterprise Services and the City of West Fargo. It's part of our Cheyenne Street project. Because of that project, they have some different lines and things that they have to move. And so we have them draw up an agreement. John has reviewed the agreement. I have as well, and so has Dustin and Chris. And we are requesting that you approve this agreement. It would be a potential change of $15,000 maximum.
Mrs. Fisk, are there any questions? Ina? This is an actionable item. What is your pleasure, gentlemen?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdevig. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Right. Commissioner Thorstead, been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the reimbursement agreement for utility infrastructure with Consolidated? Seeing none, We'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, compensation study review and recommendation of approval. Mrs. Fisk, Mrs. Will.
Good evening, Commissioners. As you all know, we have been in the process of completing a compensation study. This was approved to go through and be completed by the Commission last September 2017. And I just wanted to give you all a little bit of history in the process that we went through for the compensation study. The purpose of it is to make sure that we are equitable and comparable when looking at other entities that we compare to across the region. So what we did first is we went through and reviewed all of the job descriptions. This was reviewed by department heads, by HR, staff took a look at them as well. And then once we had those job descriptions completed, we then sent them off to MRA, which was the organization that we had hired to complete the compensation study. MRA then reviewed those job descriptions and classified them on different factors, such as the qualifications, their problem solving, their hazards, their environment. And with each of those factors, those job descriptions received a point value. So there was a cumulative point value for each job description. MRA then took the point values as well as market data from across the region and use that information to plot a pay line and create grades and then steps within grades for us to be able to use for a salary schedule. The grades were 26 total grades, and there are 11 steps within each grade. Our current structure has 80 grades and 18 steps within each grade. So it significantly decreases a lot of the confusion and the time that it takes to reach the maximum of the grade. What we did then is once we had all of those job descriptions classified, those positions good to go, we then looked at current staff, and we looked at the 2019 budgeted rate for every staff person and moved them to the next closest step on the new scale. If that next closest step, or if they were still under the minimum of the new grade, we would move them to that minimum step A of the new scale. Once that was completed, we then took into account years of service for individuals in their current position. So if they were under, if they were moved to a step A, but they've been in their position for 5 years, we then moved them to a step C to account for their years of service in their role and to help any internal equity issues that we may see and to fix some of that compression that could happen. In addition to salaries, MRA also took a look at our benefits. After comparing benefits to the current market, the recommendation at this time is to not make any changes to the benefits, with the exception of adding the public safety component to the ND PERS plan. What that is all of our staff are currently on the main retirement plan with ND PERS. With the public safety plan, it will allow those sworn police officers and firefighters the ability to retire 10 years sooner than the current ND PERS plan. This will come at a cost. It is an additional 1.19% of an employee's gross salary. We are recommending that if this is approved, that cost be picked up individually by each staff member. So it would be at no additional cost to the city to move them to this plan. If it is approved, there's a one-time enrollment option for any current employee who would want to move on to that plan. They have a one-time only chance to jump onto it, and then any newly eligible employees would also move on to that plan. If the compensation study is approved tonight, we are planning some communications out to staff. We do have a meeting tentatively scheduled for after the commission meeting this evening to give general information to staff. We also have 2 more scheduled tomorrow. And then we will have individual meetings with the employee, the department head, and HR through the end of this week to show them this is, your current rate and this is what your 2019 rate will be and your grade and step on the new scale. We also will have employees sign an updated job description as well, so we have all of those on file. Moving forward with this plan, our goal is to have job descriptions reviewed at least annually by the department heads as well as supervisors, staff, and HR. And then we are looking at having our pay grades also reviewed every 3 to 5 years, just to make sure that we aren't getting too far out of line, so we don't have to hopefully, change and do a huge study again every 5 years. If we can, fix the issues that we're seeing throughout the next couple of years, every couple of years, then we should be able to not have to worry about doing a large study. With that, I'll pass it over to Tina, and she can talk to you about the funding.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, Commissioners. You each should have a copy of the compensation study breakdown by fund that I prepared. Of the total cost, which includes Social Security, Medicare, retirement, the unfunded portion right now is $580,307.58 for the entire city. Of that, $282,355 is general fund related. $16,526 is sanitation, $73,370 is water, $18,000 approximately 45 is sewer, $118,444 is library, and $71,567 is fire department. Jenna and I met with each one of the department heads, which generally was Chris for most of them, on the other funds of sanitation, water, and sewer. We looked at where their cash reserves are at, how their revenues are coming in, how their expenses are going out, and Chris was very comfortable with using cash that he has on hand to fund the 2019 increases in the sanitation, water, and sewer funds. So those ones are relatively straightforward. We met with Sandra from the library, we met with Dan from the fire department, went over what their costs are. They were not shocked by the increases, but they said that if the commission so approves it tonight, they will take it back to their boards to discuss funding and their final approval. For the general fund, which is the most complicated of them, what I did was I looked at some of the changes that have taken place since the budget was approved. One item that we're never sure of when we approve the budget is health care. This year, we estimated a 5% increase in health care, and it came in at 2.66% as an average. So what I did was recalculated what it should have been, took the difference that was in the budget, and that was $165,000 in savings. And I applied that towards helping fund this. And then we had a position in the budget for an accountant, and I really want a finance director before I get an accountant. So to take that position out would save us probably $80,000, but I put 70 in here. We used four of it for budget adjustments that were done at the final budget hearing, so I didn't want to get that too close. And then for the balance of $47,350, I request using general fund contingencies. We build a line item into our general fund reserve every year for unforeseen budget expenditures that come up from time to time because it's just going to happen. And I would request that we use those funds to make the balance of the $282,400. Just to give you an idea of how this study went, of the 186 employees that we have, the average raise is $2,314 overall. We did not have a large amount of people that this time had large raises. It was rather straightforward. We had some departments that it was more prevalent than others. And overall, I'm very, very pleased with the study. There were a couple of employees that I know Commissioner Simmons caught one, and we looked at some of the other ones that were bigger changes to make sure that everything was in line, and we're very, very happy with the way the study was done. I want to thank all of you for allowing us to do the study and for being such good participants when we would ask you to meet with us and be brutally honest with us on what we were trying to get accomplished here, because it makes a big difference for us and for all the employees to have you guys involved and know exactly what's going on. So with that, I will take any questions, and then I can give you my recommendations that we are requesting for approval.
Commissioners, any questions for Mrs. Fisk?
I don't have a question, Mayor, but I do have a comment I'd like to make.
Please.
Jenna and Tina, you two definitely went overboard on doing this work. I want to thank you so much, because I know I called you almost every day. Both of you came in almost every day and went back and forth and back and forth. So when this is over, and if it is approved, you know, employees, I just want you to know, thank these two, because they really worked hard for you to get this done. That's all, Mayor, I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Thank you, Commissioner Dardis. My first recommendation would be to approve the public safety retirement plan for police and fire employees with the additional 1.19% in cost paid by the employee, with that being the only change to employee benefits for 2019.
All right. We'll take action on that first recommendation. Gentlemen, do you have any questions of Mrs. Fisk? Sure.
I move we accept the.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the public safety retirement plan for police and fire employees with the additional 1.19% in cost paid by the employee, with this being the only change to employee benefits. I think the paragraph should also include the term of how their retirement, that they can retire at certain, whatever that criteria is. You said 10 years earlier, but I think that there's better language there. I think we should include that in that if we can.
I agree. Yep.
All right with you?
Okay.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yep. Our second
Mrs.
recommendation, would be to approve the implementation of the compensation study as presented for the General Fund, Water, Sewer, and Sanitation Fund, with salary changes to take place January 1 of 2019. To also approve having the Fire and Library implement their salary changes as presented on the same day, January 1, 2019, contingent upon approval by the funding models of their individual boards.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Fisk?
I'll make a motion to approve.
May I? I have a comment. During the course of, since the election and being brought into this study, the compensation study, I was struck by a couple of items. Number one, the thoroughness and the job description. You know, when one takes a look at this from a layperson's perspective, if you don't see the entire layout, it's one thing to talk about how many steps and how many grades. And the reason that that's a bit easier, in my opinion, is that because everybody else does it. Bismarck does it, Fargo does it. I mean, so there's some models there of what to do. The city of West Fargo, one of the things that we found, they found, was the job descriptions. Not every city has the same types of things we do. Very close, but they align them a little bit differently. So the point I'm trying to make here is following up on Commissioner Simmons's comments. The amount of work and review in this goes beyond the steps, goes beyond the grades, goes beyond a total and complete review of the job descriptions as well. And then to take a look at, as Jenna has mentioned, the amount of years of service is one of the factors, and so it was a monumental piece of work. And the one comment I want to make to all the employees that are in the room this evening and who might be watching on, I think we're on TV somewhere. Nobody's ever really explained that to me, but I think we're on TV tonight too, is your understanding of the employees' understanding and their patience with this, because you're all very skilled and capable people. And the job market out there is one that highly skilled and capable people can go out and find other work. So, my point here is that we're sure as heck glad that you're here tonight. And if there's any other comments from the other commissioners, I realize that this was initiated under another group of commissioners. I commend them for that. It was overdue, but I'm awful proud to be a part of the decision-making process this evening, as I know Eric and Mark and Brad and Mike are also. So,
I would simply say that our staff is our #1 asset we have, so I'd be very happy to second your motion.
All right.
Simmons.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the compensation study review and recommendation for approval? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
I want to thank you again very much for your support of all of our staff, all the employees. I know they truly do appreciate the gesture and the kind words and just the thought process that went through this entire thing, because our last comp study was not the greatest. This one, having been through the other one, this one I'm very proud of. And Jenna did a really good job, and all the department heads did a stellar job, and the employees. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Next order of business is item number 7, City Administrator's Report. Mrs. Fisk.
Hello again. I will make this really quick. We had some comments today and some visits with Commission President Dardis today about the berm and the fence at Hornbachers, and for those of you that haven't been involved in that, I just wanted to kind of publicly note that Tim, at Bernie's request, reached out again to Hornbachers or the Oppidan, the contractors constructing, and in case you get any inquiries, the berm construction and the fence on top of it will begin on Wednesday. So it was made very clear to the people that have the strip mall that their certificate of occupancy could be a factor if that berm is not in place and that fence is not up, because the commission had made that very clear when that was going in many months ago, that the residents deserve to have that up right away. So just so that you know, especially Commissioner Thorstad and Commissioner Simmons, since you were here then and made it very clear, that is being followed up and watched very closely by staff, and so if you hear anything, we are moving forward in that and keeping an eye on it. Another item, budgets. The final budget books will be distributed probably next week to all of you so that you have a copy of that. Another item, John had talked to me about having a contract workshop. And what that is to invite all of you and John and myself and whoever else involved to discuss how construction contracts work, how they're put together, what items are in there that you might like, might not like, might want to change, might not want to change. John can give you more detail, but we were looking at doing that sometime this winter, so it's not anytime soon. But we did want to try and put that out there for you, just because it's always important to know what those details are and how they affect the city and some of learn from past things that have happened. I don't know if you have additional comments, John?
Thank you, Tina. Yeah, my only thoughts were to have a workshop with the commission to go over if you want to use incentives, what liquidated damages should be before we start our next contracting season. We'd probably want to meet, before February 15th. There's no rush on it. It's just something to go over, what your policy direction as a commission is with respect to our construction contracts.
The next thing I have is Matt and I will be in Bismarck on the 14th. I originally thought I was going to be on vacation next week, but I'm not. So now we'll both be attending. There's a statewide administrators meeting that's held every few months in Bismarck, and we go through all the different issues that are coming up and so forth. So Matt had agreed to go in my absence, but now, surprise Matt, I'm not going to be absent, so you're stuck with me. Other than that, the city and the staff have been busy working on the compensation study, getting everything lined up for the meetings, and we have been receiving some finance director applications, and so I hope to have somebody who's there by the end of the month. I will keep you posted. So do you have any questions for me? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Any correspondence? Is that all rolled into one, Tim? Okay. Commissioners, do you have anything on non-agenda? I want to recognize two things that happened this week, in the last several days, in the police department. And that is the Project Lifesaver on October 30th, a scholarship set up for the tragic death of David Lemmy. Equipment that will help track people with dementia and or autism. I think that, and we want to send out a shout to the Corwin Automotive Group for that generous contribution, and to the police department. Chief Donkey is here, and as well as Deputy Chief Boyer and his team for embracing this, and it's just a great way to remember David's legacy. Beautiful 6-year-old boy that tragically lost his life, and it's a great addition to our community, and we're grateful for the way that the police department has embraced that and moved it forward. Also, I want to recognize in the room Officer Nielsen, standing in the back in the red sweatshirt. It was a great event last week when we said happy retirement to Disco. And I could tell by your emotion that day that you might want to talk to some of your fellow police officers, but you really didn't care to talk to anybody else. But he's had Disco was our first police dog and has done a marvelous job. He's a Hall of Famer, so to speak, and you know, a handler like you, Mr. Nielsen, that's how that happened. So congratulations to you and your partner on one half of you retiring. So, thank you. Is there anything else? Any of you? I'd accept a motion for adjournment. So Mr. Simmons, Mr. Simmons, he insists I have a motion to adjourn. What the heck? I'll second. You won't let me use executive privilege to just close the meeting. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Have a great evening.